Hi, everyone. My name is Barb Egan, and I'm so excited that you're joining us today. I'm a registered clinical counselor out of Kelowna, British Columbia, and I own Alive Counseling. If you tune into the podcast with Therapy Talks, maybe you've heard me before or seen me before because I love doing this. It's so much fun. So I just want to welcome everybody on today, and it's our first YouTube live of me doing one. So thanks for coming on. This is exciting. And on today's show, what we're going to talk about is all sorts of fun stuff on self-love and self-judgment and how to reframe that into self-kindness, which I think we can all probably learn a little bit of tips from, and we can all resonate with, because as humans, we're pretty tough on ourselves. We usually talk harder to ourselves than anybody else. The things that I say to myself, I would never, ever say to a friend, a client, or someone else that I care about. And so, catching those are really good. As we work through some of these journal prompts from our self-love journal, we get to grow together and just have a great discussion, because that's the main thing, is often tied to this self-judgment or shame or negative self-talk, is this idea that we're alone. And we really usually keep it deeply inside. But when we can let it out with safe people in a safe context, that's actually where we gain a lot of healing, a lot of freedom. And then we get a fresh perspective to start to change that self-judgment into more something like self-kindness, self-compassion, or just a more balanced way of talking to yourself. I don't know if you guys can identify it all with that. But if you can, I would love to just hear from the audience. Have you ever been critical or that self-judgment style talking? Have you experienced that at all today? And I said today, yeah. Or ever. Mm-hmm. And if you haven't, maybe you've heard someone or you've heard a conversation like it, but something where maybe your self-judgment internal voice was going. And I'm seeing some yeses, absolutelys, every day. That's why I said today, even as a little joke, but to get us started, because we want to be able to add some lightness to it, to realize we're not alone, and that sometimes that loses its stronghold too. I'd love to hear, throughout our time today, we're going to go through some journal prompts from our self-love journal. We're going to walk through some meditations. We're going to walk through some journal exercises to help you with this. But I love that you're all being so honest of all the time. Yes, feels like all the time I'm critical of myself. I'm seeing a lot of yes with exclamations, always, all the time, these big definitive words. That's usually a good indicator for me in my life. And again, I'm a mental health professional. I should know these, but that's a good indicator for me when maybe I'm being very judgmental of myself or using that inner critic or that self-critical self-talk. Those big words, always, all the time, everybody, nobody, constantly, those big words are usually when I'm being a tad more self-judgmental than self-compassionate, or adding that self-kindness to my talk. So right then and there, as you all are sharing, that's a good indicator. And I want to encourage you, maybe a takeaway to just start to pay attention as we work through some of these examples, is if you use those big definitive type words like absolutely, everyone, always, never, nobody, maybe, just maybe, you're being a little too harsh on yourself, a little too critical, a little too judgmental. And that's a good awareness, a good indicator to start to practice some self-kindness. I'm seeing some people just say, I've really torn myself down. This is constant. I hear friends talk to themselves like this, and I'm like, no, you're amazing. And that's such a great point of the friend one, is like I had shared to start off, is the way I talk to myself is not the way I would talk to my 5-year-old or a young child or my best friend or a client or someone I really care about. And so along this journey together, I would encourage you pick someone that comes to mind that really you care about or cares about you. Like close your eyes and just picture them. Like maybe it's your mom, maybe it's a child, maybe it's a younger version of you, maybe it's a best friend, maybe it's a spouse. And as you just envision their face and their words and their tone of voice is really big, especially with judgment, because we're usually really harsh and critical and short with ourselves. Think of what they would say and the kindness that they would bring in, the compassion, how their tone of voice just slows down a little bit, some of the things they've said to you in the past. And sometimes we need to borrow their voice. We need to close our eyes. We need to get quiet. We need to get still. We need to see their face. So visualize. Even tone, tapping into tone. Oftentimes it's our self talk, but it's our self tone too, our tone of voice, because even the tone of my voice changes when I talk to a young child versus myself in my own head being critical of myself, and paying attention to that. It's amazing how one of the people in the chat said, I hear my friends talking this way about themselves. And I'm like, no, I see you in such a different light. It hurts me to see you be so hard on yourself. Well, what if that's true for us? And sometimes we need to borrow that face. So closing our eyes, getting quiet, visualizing that person who really cares about us, how they speak to us, their words. Words matter. Words are things that you can't see, but you feel. And you can carry somebody's words with you long after they're gone. You can store those words up and go back to them for years and years and years, good or bad. And so I would encourage you to talk to yourself like you would that person that you visualized. And sometimes we need to borrow their face. We need to borrow their words. We need to borrow their tone of voice. We need to borrow what they say about us until it becomes our own internal voice, from self-judgment into self-kindness. And I also recognize, we're humans, we're not perfect. So we've had people say some really hurtful, untrue, very cutting words to us too, where that self-judgment maybe came from. And part of that is realizing where it did come from and then choosing, okay, that external voice of a really harsh coach, teacher, parent, friend, ex is not true. And just as one external voice negatively impacted me to become more judgmental of myself, maybe a different external voice of kindness. So, again, it could be a spouse or a friend, a colleague, a coach, a teacher, a therapist. That powerful, positive external voice can eventually seep in and become your own new internal voice, too. So there's a lot of hope. That's what I really want to paint. Pick someone who maybe you really resonate with, who really champions you, who's really for you. Visualize their face, their tone, words they've said, write them down, because it's amazing what we forget. And if there's this visual reminder, sometimes on a sticky note, even of your bathroom window, or your mirror that you're going to see every day, or an inspirational quote, that can be enough to shift our mind. Because just like when we hear a friend talk negatively about themselves and we don't see them that way, we need to get out of our own head and see ourselves a different way. And it's amazing. And in some of the chat, people are saying, yeah, other people have noticed how I talk about myself and tell me to lighten up. And I don't even realize I'm beating myself up, because it becomes a habit. It becomes ingrained at us. I mean, look at how we, hold our cell phone, and we can look up and text. We know where everything is. It's become muscle memory. And the more times that we say it, the more likely we are to believe it, negative or positive. So when people come in and say, I've just always been this way, or I'll always be this way, I've always been hard on myself, I try to encourage them that the brain is like a muscle. And yes, it's gotten really strong in this area or this movement of negativity or being judgmental towards yourself. But it can also get really strong the more that we use it, because repetition builds strength, just like a muscle, just like a brain, just like a new neural pathway in the brain of what you say to yourself, a more positive way of thinking, or going from self-judgment to self-kindness. There's a lot of hope here. So you can change. Let me encourage you. If you're someone, and I think we're human, so we might have all felt this way to some extent of, I've just always been this way, or I'll always be this way. There's a lot of hope. That brain is just like a muscle. Maybe I've been this way up until now. And it's starting again with that tone of voice, the word choice that we use. I'm learning to be more kind to myself. What if we even just use that word? I'm learning to be more kind to myself. And often it gets a little more dark before the dawn. It gets a little harder before it gets better because we're bringing awareness of, wow, I didn't even recognize that it's so automatic. I beat myself up, or I'm so hard on myself, but the people around me start to realize it and they're helping me bring awareness. And that can be really uncomfortable. So I just want to commend whoever shared that. That is so brave, because that would be really easy not to share that. But I guarantee a lot of us resonate with that. That's often another good indicator, other those big, definitive, everybody, nobody words, is the people around us. What are they speaking into our lives? If they're trusted people, not everyone has the right to speak into your life, but if you really trust them and you believe them and they want the best for you, and they're saying, hey, I'm kind of concerned of how you're behaving, or how you're talking to yourself, you're really, really critical or harsh on yourself, and I care about you. I don't want to see you so tightly wound. I want you to be more loose or happy. Or I want you to see how I see you. That's a good indicator that maybe some things need to change. And I think some of these journal prompts will really help. I think counseling can help, but it's often just filling yourself with good things. Again, the brain's like a muscle. How are you going to work it out? Filling that, saturating your soul really with positive influences on social media, what you're watching, what you're listening to, who you're around. Kind of pay attention who fills you up, who drains you. Same thing with exercises that you do. Physical exercises, yes, can be really good to feel good and accomplished and accountable and make endorphins, and that can feel really, really good. Or journal. I'd love to hear other things as you share. What other things kind of maybe help boost that mood, where we can get to a point to start to maybe move the judgment even into a little bit more kindness. Typically we don't go from judgment to kindness either. Think of them like really, really hot of a shower and really, really cold. It's really hard to go from one to the other. It's kind of a shock to the system. So sometimes we have to go to lukewarm. We have to go to neutral. And often we need to get to a place of just stability in our lives, of routine or exercise, or enough going pretty well to go from very harsh and judgmental to, over time with routine and putting good pillars in our life, that we get to this neutral or lukewarm place to then add even more to it, or be really intentional on doing the work or digging deeper. And that's not true for everybody, but if you're feeling like, wow, that would be so difficult to go from self-judgment to self-kindness, you're kind of right. It is really hard to go from really scalding hot to really freezing cold. And it's okay to try to go into the middle more too. I love that some people are even identifying with each other of, hey, I felt that way too. Glad someone understands. Hopefully we can learn some tips together and how to be more kind to ourselves. And just the space is really safe to say, wow, I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one who's noticed this about myself, but other people have. And I feel so hopeful. Sometimes I think, well, this is how I am. Guess that's life. No, there is hope. Yes, this is so good. Oh, you guys are awesome. Not being hard on myself after having a baby has been hard, and I am hopeful I can be better. That's a huge one. Part of my job is I get to meet people from all walks of life. And whether that's university students, I get to supervise at the university, and I get to work with graduate students, and they're becoming counselors. And for a lot of them, it's a second career. So they're coming, in their 40s even. And that's a big change. Another big one that I work in is moms. And that's huge because it's like the societal pressure of bouncing back, or your body, or you kind of do that helicopter view out and you pinpoint, wow, it's a lot of women, a lot of people, a lot of men, a lot of anybody's who feel that societal pressure of, I should look a certain way, I should act a certain way, I should have this job or fit into this box. And, none of us fit into boxes. We're not Amazon. And so making sure that you're welcome here wherever you're at, whatever you're dealing with, whatever your judgment likes to speak about, whether it's body image or a season of life that you're in, or work, or not blank enough, that's really from all sorts of walks of life that we see. It could probably be boiled down to that of I'm not blank enough. Mostly I'm not good enough, whether that's after having a baby or my body or my job compared to so and so. So again, those can be those self-judgment style thinking of I'm not blank enough, I'm not good enough. So pay attention if you're starting to recognize that in yourself or those around you, because that can enact some compassion for other people. If you start to see, oh, my friend's talking really harshly about themselves, or they're comparing a lot, or they're spending a lot of time on social media, and it's just this vortex that sucks us in. And some things are really good, like therapy talks or switch research on there that are uplifting, but some, kind of drain us. And so pay attention. You have the power there to say, I'm going to mute this person, or I'm going to unfollow them, and really making, your social media time, just as your physical people real life interaction time, intentional of who drains me and who doesn't. Okay, we have a question that's come in, and then we will probably go into those prompts too, but this is really for you guys of where you're at, what you're struggling with. This is a topic, again, that is, it's not a cookie cutter example necessarily, or a specialized treatment plan that everyone follow this and you'll get this. We're human, and we all have, our judgment comes up in different ways. So our kindness is going to come up in different ways. And I think that's really important to know that there's going to be examples here that maybe you resonate with and maybe you don't, but your friend's going to, or your coworker's going to. And you might be the only one who's heard a simple example or something similar of it in their life, and you get to gently and kindly speak into them. And maybe it's your voice, your external voice, that helps become their internal voice. And one thing I encourage people is, if you're having trouble believe that, borrow my voice. Just borrow my voice until maybe it becomes your own a little bit. I don't need to fit into a box. I'm not Amazon. Well, I'm a mom, so I shop on Amazon a lot, and local. Don't worry, I love local, but it's so convenient. Thank you. Oh, okay. So we have a great question, Diana. How does prolonged stress and anxiety turn into medical conditions? For example, stopping rumination, but I've noticed recently that I get random heart palpitations even if I'm relaxed. Great question. Before we even unpack that a little bit more, so anytime, back to tone of voice, say the judgment, I bet when you're harsh on yourself, and pay attention to this, like reflect back on whether it's today or the last week or the next time, I bet your tone is hurried. I bet it's harsh. I bet it's short. Because when I'm under stress, I usually talk like this to myself: hurry up, come on, you can do it. You should have been better. What's wrong with you? Whereas if I talked to someone I really cared about or borrowed their voice, it would be, hey, you're really doing a great job. Or you might be really tired. Your body really needed to rest, and that's okay. The dishes can wait. You can come back to those. Hey, I'm really proud of you. And do you see how my tone of voice changed? Not just my talk, my self-talk and my words, but my self-tone. It just really drastically changed into very hushed, rushed, frantic, panic, coerced. Well, my fight or flight system gets activated. My cortisol, the stress hormone, my anxiety system, the nervous system gets activated. That's high stress and anxiety for a long period of time. And so what can happen is, actually chemically, hormonally, that starts to change the brain chemistry. And that can then turn into an imbalance of hormones, like a medical condition. So the good news is counseling is very, very effective against that. Sometimes medication is needed, but not always. And so there's, again, a lot of hope. But if we're ruminating, that's a great word. I've worked on stopping rumination, but I've noticed that I get random heart palpitations, even if I'm relaxed. So rumination is when you're replaying the same thing over and over and over again, probably rushed, that frantic, coercion, pressure style thinking, the self-judgment talk, that critical self-talk. That's rumination. I can't believe I said that to those friends I was trying to make, or that big group that I talked to. Oh, I sound like such an idiot. What's wrong with me? They probably think this about me. That would be an example. And over again, rumination, what we grow, what we water grows. So that rumination, that negative thought grows. It becomes more believable. Repetition builds strength. The more I think it, the more I believe it. And rumination is like being on a hamster wheel. You don't learn anything, you're stuck on there and it's not going anywhere. Now, rumination is one thing, but let me encourage the anecdote would be reflection. Reflection is just, what did I learn from this? What can I learn from this? Maybe it is self-kindness of, I'm doing the best I can. I'm proud of myself for going to that group and trying to meet new people. It will pay off. Hey, I'm really proud of, even though I didn't know anyone, I still went. Oh, I was really kind and I smiled to someone. And sometimes when I go to place, I just make a goal of connect with one person, say hi to one person, and then that can sometimes snowball or go over a few sample things to say more than just how are you, how was your day, what do you do, those sorts of things, but have some go-to ammo. So reflection can be, what can I learn, how do I grow? It's actually going for a run outside versus being stuck on a treadmill of rumination, if we gave that analogy. And so rumination, negative thoughts just go over and over and over. It's stress piles, it anxiety, stress, it perpetuates that. The chemical imbalance can be very perpetual in the brain because you don't really get off that hamster wheel. You're not doing anything with it. So it's just sitting and heaping on you. And so no wonder you feel it in your body. Heart palpitations, anxiety and stress manifest physically. Often our body tries to tell us something's up before our mind clues in. So racing heart, sweaty palms, dry mouth, stomach all in knots. Those things are really, really popular of what stress and anxiety can look like physically. One resource I really like is called Mind Shift, and it has there on that app. It's a free app put out by Anxiety Canada. Sanvelo is a really good one for the US too, of the physical symptoms as well as the cognitive ones, but the physical symptoms of that anxiety, stress, or usually that's when the self-judgment style talk comes out. Because again, my tone of voice activates my nervous system, my anxiety system, and then I start to feel more anxious. So if I'm being harsh and blunt and cruel and critical to myself, my anxiety fight or flight is going to come on. And no wonder I feel anxious because my hormones are going off too in my brain. And no wonder then my body is feeling that too. So they all really go hand in hand. And one, I think, to turn that from rumination to reflection is, Diana, you know your body. You're able to tap into that of when you're ruminating. That's a great word to use too, and identify it. I'm ruminating right now. And we all do this. We're human. We're replaying the same thought over and over and over again. It's probably judgmental or critical or negative, or we're just not getting anywhere from it. That's rumination. We're really not getting anywhere with it. Reflection is, okay, what can I learn from this? And so when we're in rumination and we notice it in our body, even just identifying it, name it to tame it. That's what I call it. Name it to tame it. I'm ruminating. I feel it in my chest. And even just by that, we take power back. Now, maybe the heart palpitations don't go away immediately, but you correlate the reason why. You connect the brain and the body, which again soothes the nervous system or the anxiety system, which will naturally help it calm down. But you're giving a reason, because it's so overwhelming to know, I'm relaxed. Why am I still feeling this way? Will this ever end? It's really overwhelming. But when you're able to name it to tame it and connect those dots, even physically in my body, where am I feeling it? You get over it rather than feeling underneath and overwhelmed by it. And I mean that self-judgment talk or that symptom of anxiety or stress in your body, that any negative type thing that you're feeling, you can name it, then you can tame it. And so good for you for being in tune with your body and even just noticing where your body is telling you, hey, something's up, something needs to change. And that's something that I would encourage us all of, where do I feel it in my body? Maybe we can't go right to our head if we're just so used to that self-judgment talk. It's so hard then to go right to self-kindness because we're not really going to believe it. It's like, you're so stupid. Why would you say that? Or nobody likes you. Everybody else has it better. Everyone else is more successful. To then go, well, no, you're doing amazing. You're so great. Everybody loves you. You're so successful. Those, again, the hot and cold example, it's so far from it. But if we could say, I'm growing in this new skill of mine. I'm showing up to things to make better friends. Community is important to me, and I can be my best version there. I will just be kind and try to connect with one person. That would be that lukewarm middle example that we would look for. And that would be reflecting. That would be shifting from self-judgmental talk to more self-kindness type style. So that's a good voice. And then also, feel where in my body. I've also been struggling to relearn who I am because for so long I've spent energy and identity being strong and self judging. So now that I am trying to change, I don't know who I am anymore. And you're in this metamorphosis. You're not who maybe you want to be necessarily yet. You're in the process. You're in process. And that's a beautiful, really hard place to be. And it's so important. This is where most of the hill climb is had. If you think about it, like the best views come from the hardest climb. And most often we stay in those valleys of our life because they're comfortable. There's flowers there, there's nutrients, and we need some of that. But it's comfort in our pain or our self judgment. We're just so used to it. We've always done it, or we grew up in a home where that was done by our mom or our sister or someone else, and we're just used to it, or a friend circle. But now we have to make that climb. There's some things we learned along the way. There's some nutrients in those flowers and of the valley of our lives, but we have to use that to kind of sustain ourselves up that hill climb. And the best views come from the hardest climbs. So we need to then be gentle with ourselves and patient that it's going to take a while to relearn who I am and what works for me, because the things that I say to myself to reframe that self-judgment more into self-kindness is not what I say is not going to be what you say necessarily. We can all work on certain things or have certain guidelines. And that's why I love those prompts, is because they're really personalized. It's really unique to you, and they're more open-ended for a reason. And this is again where processing and debriefing with safe friends or counselor can be really beneficial, because it helps make the rubber meet the road and make you see it in real life. Because otherwise we can think about it, but if we don't really journal out our thoughts or see it in real life, it doesn't become part of our real life. And so that could be something that you practice too, and just know I'm in process, and that's okay. No pressure to be there or have arrived today. And yeah, great. Oh, I just finished your inner critic course for the second time this year. Awesome. The first time I did it, I rushed through it. So the second time around, I took it a little bit slower, and it's been life-changing for me. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Maddie. I really appreciate it. And that inner critic course really came out of this whole premise of inner critic, self-critical talk, self-judgmental self-talk internally in my head that I was getting pretty sick of. And so it's something I'm really passionate about, of working with people to transform that, because I think as humans, we all have that. In psychology, we call it the negativity bias. So what that means is basically the majority of our thoughts, from anywhere, say 60,000 thoughts a day, around 80%, some research says, is negative. So if the majority of our thoughts, and we have about a thought per second, is negative, wow, most of us have some pretty negative self-talk. We're probably pretty judgmental, or probably self-critical too. And we could all use this in some area of our life. Sometimes it hurts more than others, or different seasons feel differently. But I'm so glad to hear that, because it really did. It's out of my own struggle that really came. And I think out of our own hurts and wounds come our deepest impact. So I really appreciate that. Thank you. Great. Yeah, silencing the inner critic. I found along with the self-love journal. Yes, they're so amazing. So great. Oh, good, good. Okay, so speaking of the self-love journal, it is pretty similar, a little bit different. The inner critic journals are going to be coming out, which is really exciting, but the self-love journal is so great. So I am going to walk you guys through one of the exercises. If you have it, it's from day 5, or you can mark it and go back and do it. But I'm going to walk us through it. And so it's called Reframing Self-Judgment into Self-Kindness, which is what this YouTube Live is all about. So I'll read it, and we'll walk through some examples. I'd love to hear from yours. If you don't want me to share your name or anything, I don't have to. You can just put like an X by it and then share your answer, and I'll respect confidentiality because that's part of counseling. It's great. When we fall short of our expectations, we can approach the situation with self-kindness or self-judgment. It can be easy to get down on ourselves when we realize that we have been self-critical. However, we can work to identify when this happens and consciously reframe the self-judgment into self-kindness. So, what I take out of that when we fall short of our expectations, normally most of us, we think, okay, it's going to go this way. When it goes this way, we're usually met with this unmet expectation, which can be disappointment. And then we get to choose what we do with that. Do we heap this pile of burning coal on ourselves and make it really judgmental and critical? Or do we say, hey, I did get to hear, maybe this expectation was a bit unrealistic and I can reframe that and make it more realistic. I could give myself some kindness to help myself actually get up here a little bit more. But we have the choice. I think that's the big thing for me, is that often I go into a reaction of judgment, but I actually have a choice. Even if I go to judgment first, or my body starts to get really hot and my stomach drops, take a deep breath and I can pull back a little bit, and I have a choice of what I step into next. If that reaction of judgment is my initial, well, I can reflect and act differently, actually, in kindness, or take some space, or do some breathing, or something like that. So then the prompt goes on to say, quick steps to reframing self-judgment. I like the quick steps. Identify when you are making a harsh judgment about yourself. Ask yourself, is this judgment completely true? Am I being overly harsh? Think of an alternative response that is self-kind. So again, that first step really is just identifying when we're making a harsh judgment about yourself. And if you'd like, you can share in the chat, what are some of your go-tos? Like me, is it the big definitive words? Everybody, nobody, always, never? Is it around certain people or certain situations, around work, or this one person I really, compare myself to? Is it my tone of voice or certain words that I use? So identify when I'm making a harsh judgment about myself. And then I think just simply challenging it of, is this 100% true? Sometimes I think of it like a pie chart. So is this 100% true? Meaning that everybody else watching would 1,000% believe, or 100% believe, that I looked like an idiot when I spoke up in a meeting and nobody said anything. No, although I feel that way, I don't know for sure what they're thinking. And even though I feel that, feelings aren't always facts. So am I 100% true? Well, maybe I'm only 75% sure that people are thinking that. And if somebody is safe that I can debrief with, and they talk to me and they just ask questions or reassure me of, are you sure they really thought that? What happened to make you believe that? Oh, nobody spoke up. Are there any other alternatives to that? Well, maybe they agreed with what I said, and there wasn't really a reason to continue that conversation. Has there ever been a time in a meeting where somebody else spoke up? You agreed with what they said, you liked what they said, but you didn't speak up. Did it mean that you thought they're an idiot, or they don't deserve to be there, or they're not that smart, or they should get fired? Probably not. And even if they did, so what? So what? And so those would be some ways to kind of help give an alternative. Again, thinking of someone specific, close your eyes, see their face, like look at a picture. That's where phones can be really great too, is we have so many pictures on our phone. Look at a picture of someone you love and, oh, what would they say to me? Oh, I'm going to borrow their voice right now. Even if I don't feel it 100%, I'm going to start to water that. And if I start to water that thought of what they would say about me, eventually that will grow. And so let's see what some of your self-judgment words are. Definitely, those always never words for me. Feelings aren't always facts. Yeah, that's so true. Yes, feel free to take down notes too, or come back and listen, because a lot of these times, maybe we hear something and it resonates with us, but it's for a future season. Like what I hear now might not be applicable to myself 5 months when I walk through something, or the next time that I start to really pay attention, or I'm in a space where I can really pay attention to that self-judgmental talk, I can then go back and practice. And if you're like me, sometimes if that happens, you're like, oh, I just listened to something on this. Oh, what do I do? And this is where you could ruminate and just replay the negative thing that happened over and over and over again, or beat yourself up and guilt and all of that. Or you can come back and listen, or go to your notes, or go to the journal and think, okay, I'm going to pick one thing from here. I don't have to do everything. I can just pick one thing that really, really resonates with me. And that can be really good. And I love, yes, where we're identifying where some of these self-critical thoughts are coming from. One person says they're coming from comparison. So comparing my thoughts, actions, or feelings to other people, very self-conscious of how my life compares to the rest of the world. And isn't that so easy on social media? Like, we don't see the whole picture. We see somebody's highlight reel and we compare it to our negative reel and our whole messy life, but we only see a glimpse of it. And some of the words that we call ourselves, this is a great one from Lee. I call myself lazy. When, if I am honest with myself, I've been physically ill for a while now, and that's a huge one. A lot of us, we mislabel ourselves. And when we label ourselves, we put ourselves in this box, which again, we're not meant for. We put ourselves in this label or this box of lazy, or I'll never be that person. Lazy is a big one though, because sometimes our bodies are just so exhausted mentally from our brain ruminating and going. And in fact, what your body really needs is rest. And that can be the most kind thing for it. And shifting that perspective is huge, of saying, you know what, I chose to rest today. This is what my body needs. This was good for me. Even those types of things, you're not going to feel it necessarily or believe it right away, but that's okay. You have something to go back to, and some repetition will build strength. And it's a whole perspective shift of, I'm lazy, to my body needs this, and I'm going to honor my body, and I deserve rest. I deserve this. Yes, everyone else has their life together, whatever that means, and I don't. I love that. What does that mean? I think that too, just totally. And I think we all think that, if so and so has it better, the grass is greener, and that's where that self-judgmental talk can come in. But it's amazing because I get to walk with people of all walks of life, that they walk into my office and you think, wow, this person literally has everything you could ever want: this mansion, this job, this family, the car, whatever. And they're depressed, or they're anxious, or they're more likely, again, most humans, I'm not blank enough. That's trying to make up for something. I'm not good enough. And all that stuff is just this facade of, I'm trying to make up for this, or I'm trying to outrun my self-judgmental self-talk, instead of really dealing with it. And so everybody feels this from time to time, and there's no shame in getting tools in your toolbox to combat it. Oh, I should be farther along in my academic or my career journey. I should be at this stage of life, but I'm here. Those unmet expectations, unrealistic expectations. And this is morphing because our culture has morphed. I mean, marriage and kids, career, what you study looks a lot different now than it did 20 years ago, even, or 40 years ago. And when we're comparing again to other people in different stages of life, often our parents or our family, or what we feel our family may be comparing or putting on us, self-judgment can come out. I'm not here when they were, or I should be here. I look around at my friends and they are seemingly here. Even friends, even if you know the ins and outs of their life, they probably don't necessarily share all these negative self-talk type thoughts, that negativity bias in their brain. But now that you know the negativity bias, you know that most of us have it. And so that should allow you to have a little bit of more self-compassion to them, but to yourself, especially, because that person can really come off as having it all together, but underneath really doesn't feel that way. Yeah, I'm not smart enough. Comfort and ease equal weakness. I'm never going to be a good enough mom. That's a huge one. Again, with women in particular, of this identity, because it's all encompassing. We just had Mother's Day. That's a big one. Am I good enough? And we all struggle with this. And it's amazing. There's some of those videos that it's like, what the mom thinks of herself, and it's usually very judgmental, self-judgment, very hard on ourselves. And then it's the video of what the kids say, and it's like filled with self-kindness. And I'm like, okay, I need to borrow from your your voice for this, of what you see. And it's amazing because it's all about perspective of what we see. And that's going to be a practice here we're going to utilize, and how to actually shift that, or one of those practices in the reframing self-judgment to self-kindness, think of an alternative response that's self-kind. Well, when I read that, and again, I'm a therapist, I know these things, I should know these things. I think, okay, well, how do I do that? Okay, yeah, I want to do that. But how do I do that? And that can be really hard. So here's one practice from the journal that I love. So again, I just want you guys, wherever you're at, like, get really comfy in your seat, or if you're on a walk, just listen, or sit down, put your feet on the floor, take a big deep breath. And one more. And just, if you can, if you want to, just keep your eyes closed. And I want you to reflect on a situation when you were unusually hard on yourself, or a recent incidents when you were self-critical. What comes to mind? What was your initial self-critical thought? I can't do this. They don't want me. There's no way I could possibly blank. I'm not as blank as so-and-so. And is this judgment completely true? Did it play out to be completely true? What are some alternative self-kind responses? And if this is difficult for you, I want you to come back to it. Close your eyes and think of that person who really cares for you, or someone you really care about. So we have some moms in the chat. Think of what you would say to your child if they were feeling really critical of themselves. Would you say, yeah, you are not good enough? Yeah, you can't do this. No, I bet you'd say, I love you just as you are. You're worthy of love. You can do it. You can do hard things. Remember the time that you didn't know how to learn, didn't know how to ride a bike, and you stayed with it and you did it, and you can do it now. Or if you're a mom of a really little baby, of just that innocence and pureness, of just soaking that in, of borrowing from that purity and innocence is beautiful. And then we can bring that judgment in, and they just are in such a contrast, such a clash. Maybe it's your own mom's voice, or a teacher, or a coach, or a spouse, or a friend who has said really life-giving things over you. And allow that to just wash over you, of how you were such a loyal friend, that you're always there. You're someone so empathetic to talk to. You get it. You're so loving and caring. They value you. They appreciate you. And why are those types of self-kind responses better? They probably don't make us feel as tight in our body and our muscles, because as you can probably tell, our tone of voice and our body reflects what we're feeling. When we're judgmental and stress and anxiety are involved, we're usually very tightly wound and our muscles contract and we're tight. But when we're kind and we're flowy and our tone reflects that, we're a little bit more easygoing, laid back, let go in our body and in our thoughts. And on the journal too, we have more information and guidance on reframing on page 117. So I encourage you, go sit by the lake, or at your favorite coffee shop, or a favorite spot in your house, and grab a tea or a coffee. And one day during the day, if you're a morning person or evening person or afternoon, spend some time working through that. And it could look like some of these examples. So a harsh self-judgment, as we've seen in the chat, is I'm a horrible cook. But a self-kind response could be, I often get compliments on my favorite dish. So again, we're able to see that one isn't entirely true. It's not 100% absolute truth. I'm a horrible cook, even though in the moment I can feel that. It's not necessarily fact, just the type of word, horrible. That's a big, strong word too. And that's harsh. We could probably reflect that in our tone if we're saying that over ourselves. But then to kind of add that more balanced response, it's not, I'm the best cook ever. It's, wait a second, in a real life example, I often get compliments on my favorite dish, or when I bring brownies to the birthday party or the potluck. People really like those. And you pick something specific. I think that's a key, is that our self-judgment is a reaction, but we don't have to stay there. We can choose to respond. A reaction is usually involuntary. It happens right away. It comes out before we even realize it. That's a reaction. It doesn't mean it's true. And once we catch the reaction, we can choose to respond of, well, wait a minute, is that 100% true? Has there been times where that hasn't been true? Oh, my brownies are really good. Or at that one time at that potluck at Susie's, and you make a specific example and it feels more real rather than, I am a good cook. We want to make a specific example because we're more likely to believe it. For example, if I said, you know what, you're really kind, you're a really kind friend, that might feel good, but it may not really sink in unless I told you, you know what, you're a really kind friend. I really appreciate when I was sick last weekend and you dropped off chicken noodle soup for me. That was a specific instance, time, and what you did, and that resonated. So when it's specific, it usually carries a deeper weight. So pay attention to when you're getting harsh or self-critical and judgmental of yourself, the tone of voice, the words you use, the instance. Write it down in the journal, in your note section of your phone, in your own journal, blank journal, but get it out. Sometimes that's the most important part, is just get it out so we have a more objective lens, and then we can go to respond, a self-kind response. And then we get to choose the types of words and whose words they're going to be. And they can be someone that you close your eyes and you think of, who really loves you or who you really love, and spend some time. It's going to take some time. It's not going to be an instant thing. So don't beat yourself up there of, oh, it didn't come right away. Like, we're going to have to really think on this and sit on it and meditate on it a little bit. And that's okay. It's part of the work. It's actually making our brain stronger. If the brain's like a muscle, and for muscles to get stronger, they have to get broken down and have some pain or feel a little bit uncomfortable. The same is true for our brain and how we think about ourselves. Going from self-judgment to self-kindness is not going to feel really easy. There's actually going to be some uncomfortability in it, but that's a really good sign. It doesn't mean, oh, this won't ever work. It actually means this is working, because I need to break down some things. Just like a muscle, I have to get uncomfortable for it to be rebuilt back up. And that can be really big. But it's just a lot of practice, and give yourself permission and grace to yourself that it's going to take some time. And sometimes it can help to look at those pictures of other people or spend some time writing down what they've said about you to borrow their voice. And that's okay too. So I'd, I'd love to hear from everyone in the chat just what maybe has resonated with you, or if you want to share an example or anything that you want to share that's maybe a good takeaway. Again, there's a lot of power when we can share, because if we keep it to ourselves, those self-judgment type thinking, we believe it. And it's like the shame cycle too, that's so strong. But when we let safe people in, we actually bring some light to it to see, oh, it's not entirely true. And we can be or enact a more self-kind response. Yeah. Oh, I'm just seeing in the chat, I'm catching up a little bit of just seeing what you are saying to each other and just how you're encouraging each other. And one person's even just saying, Diana to Lee, I appreciate your kind words more than I can verbally express. Thank you so much. Like, we're in this safe community together where we can really encourage one another to say, hey, I feel this way too. And it's such an open and honest community. It's a safe place. This is what we need to talk about those things, because that's when it loses its stronghold. And we can then start to practice against rumination or self judgment into more reflecting and self kindness. And sometimes it's just realizing that I'm talking that way to myself, or that I'm ruminating over the same thing over and over, or I'm being judgmental, or I'm having this critical self talk because I've just walked around thinking this is normal, or this is the way I talk to myself. I've always done it and I always will. And I hope today you leave thinking, I may have up until this point, but it doesn't mean I always will. It doesn't mean I always have to. In fact, I can choose one of these tools to practice, and then maybe a different one, and then maybe a different one, and see what happens to become more self kind. And that's the hope of it. We are able to change our talk. My biggest takeaway, asking myself, is that 100% true? Good. And I'm so visual. I love to visualize like a pie chart. And is it 100% true? And even if it's like 90%, and then the other little 10% of the pie says no, or you draw it, some people like to draw this and color it in and say what the other alternative perspectives are. That can be good, like kind of color coded. Again, not all of us are crafty, but just those visuals, we all learn differently. Yeah, I don't let my emotions go unexpressed. And that's my biggest challenge. And again, that name it to tame it is such a beautiful exercise of, again, back to a wheel type analogy, but it's called a feeling wheel. You can Google it and save the image on your phone, and it will help you just decide what feeling that you're feeling. Because a lot of us, it's like, what are you feeling? I don't know. And it's some synonyms of not just fear or anxiety, but overwhelmed or low self-esteem, and all sorts of these other branched words. And so if something resonates with you, well, then you just named it, so then you can tame it. Or if you're someone who feels it very physically, you can name it in your body. Oh, my self-judgment's coming back. I feel that pit in my stomach or my racing heart. I'm going to name it to tame. I'm just going to put my hand on my heart right now and just take a really big deep breath. Is this 100% true? Is there another way to look at it? Whose voice can I borrow right now? And that can be someone that's very huge. And even pick that specific friend. Oh, I love that. And even Sarah says, I hear my friend Paige's voice. Like, pick someone specific, because just like that example of, hey, you're a kind friend, or hey, you're a kind friend for bringing me chicken noodle soup last week when I was sick. Well, specific really, really makes us believe it a lot more effective. Karen says, the tone is what resonates with me. My daughter and I are going through difficult times, and we too often start yelling over each other. It's so true. It's really hard. It's like we mirror each other as humans, so our tones can escalate pretty quickly. And you see it in couples counseling a lot. But just even that power of the tone and the word changes is huge. And even with ourselves, I think it starts with ourselves. Self-soothing is so important in ourselves first. Yeah. Using someone else's voice in times of self-judgment is something I'm looking forward to trying. That's beautiful. And these are all new skills. They're not going to change overnight, but it's all about trying and practicing. And if that negativity bias is true, that most of us have, the majority of our thoughts are negative, that means we have lots of opportunities to try these new skills and just become aware of them, write them down, or practice somebody else's voice in that situation, or talk to that person and just say, you know what, I'm trying this thing. What would you say in this situation? Maybe you need to ask them for examples, and that's okay too. I bet they'd actually be quite honored and want to help in that. And again, negativity bias, they probably feel it in some instance too. Yeah, I should apply the rule when I say something to myself. Is it kind? Is it true? Is it helpful? I love that. Is it kind? Is it true? Is it helpful? Yes, because there's a lot of times where what I'm spilling around or ruminating in my head is not helpful. Reflecting, though, can be helpful, because reflection is asking, what did I learn? What can I try to take away from this? And that's huge. Oh, so good. Oh, Heidi said, recommends the book, How to Be Your Own Best Friend. Ooh, I'm gonna have to look into that. I like that. Yeah. Oh, very nice. Oh, it's so good to see too. It's thank you for sharing. Ian says, I'm glad to know I'm not the only one. I think that's the most important part as humans is we want to feel felt. We want to feel seen and noticed and loved, even amidst of our pain, and know that we're not alone. And it's so powerful. Oh, I never learned how to identify and feel my feelings as a child. So learning how to do that now is both incredibly challenging and empowering. Oh, Maddie, thank you for saying that. I know it's so hard. And as a therapist, like my husband's like, what are you feeling? And I just go blank. I don't know. And so I struggle with that. And I honestly, the feeling wheel helps me in that too, or where in my body to start to describe certain words because they resonate differently with different people in different situations. But that name it to tame it's really powerful. And that's the identifying and the being able to shift from judgment to self kindness. What we practice grows stronger. Yes, Lakana, good. I'm excited about the new practice. Good. And it's practice over perfection. It's progress over perfection. And just be really kind to yourself. You have permission to try and to be patient with yourself. And it's amazing to see this whole community that's cheering you on. So I do just want to thank you all so much for coming on to the YouTube Live. This is my first one. I'm so excited. It's so much fun. So I hope you join again or listen in on the podcast. And I just hope something of this resonates with you because I know I've been there. I know I do struggle with it at times too. And some of these things have really helped me. And I hope that it can help you. And then that ripple effect goes out to your colleagues, your homes, your friends, your families. And we just start to slowly impact people around us because kindness is contagious too. Awesome. I'm really glad. Oh, that's good. And Maddie and Lee, just you guys are awesome, just interacting of how something you said resonated with another one of the people in the chat. And she's saying, I just wrote this down so I can remember to try this the next time too. And it's like what I'm sharing could be sparking somebody else's thoughts, and then you share it, and then that resonates with someone. So thank you for that. I just love the interaction. It's so much fun. And I just really, really appreciate all of you coming in on a Monday to start your week off right. I mean, it's all about mental health on a Monday, right? So that's really good. So thank you for coming on. Oh, very good. Thank you all. Yeah. And I think the next one, stay tuned in our socials of when we'll do the next one. And we release new podcasts every week, but our next YouTube Live will be, I think, sometime in June, which will be really exciting too. So thank you. Thank you all so much for coming on. I really need this too at times. So I just really appreciate you. Thank you. Yeah. Knowing other people are going through it is huge. It's a great start to the week. That is so true. Yeah, some journaling every day has really helped Maddie. The act of writing it out on paper. Yeah, making myself put all those thoughts into words is how I process. Hashtag mental health Monday. Yes. Oh, so good. So good. Well, keep following us on YouTube and the podcast, Switch Therapy Talks on Instagram, so you can keep up to date with some of these. It's just so much fun. And there's a lot of great resources that we get to share. And even in these chats, this is so powerful because we get to hear of these different books or apps that we like and get to share with one another on a similar topic that we wouldn't have normally known. So that's really amazing. Thank you for sharing that, because those are a wealth of knowledge too. Awesome. Thanks.
Why do birds suddenly every time.